what makes technology great is that it is value neutral and provides data. And then it's up to human beings how they want to use that data. And if we are provided with more data, then this gives us a better ability to choose. But value neutral is important when it comes to the platforms. Now, value neutral isn't important when it comes to, you come to the Daily Wire. We're not value neutral. And we make very obvious to you we're not value neutral because we're providing you another piece of data that you can use to judge whether you think our stories are good or not. That's fine. What you can't do is pretend to be value neutral and then actually promote an agenda. And this is where social media is really going to have a problem. And it creates an actual legal problem for a lot of social media that I think is just around the corner. So it used to be that there were gatekeepers in media, rather, that for most of the history of the United States, at least in the 20th century, there were gatekeepers at the top of the media. There were only three major television networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, right? And these were the news providers for you. Everyone watched these, and so there was a monopoly. Those gatekeepers decided what you saw when it came to the news. The same thing was true in print, because the barriers to entry for the print media were very high. It's very expensive to go out and hire reporters and print millions of newspapers and distribute millions of newspapers. So that meant there was a monopoly, right? New York, or an oligopoly is more accurate. The New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, the LA Times, right? These were the newspapers that you got. And then Fox News started to break that monopoly by providing an alternative on cable. And then finally, the monopoly was truly broken by the internet. The internet exploded this entire monopoly. Now there are no gatekeepers anymore, right? You want to visit Daily Wire? You want to engage with my podcast? You just do it, right? I don't need your approval to put my podcast up. I don't need your approval to put my website up. I don't need anyone's approval to do that because there's a neutral source that I put my stuff on, and then you get it, right? You either get it at YouTube or you get it at SoundCloud or at Google Play or at Stitcher or at iTunes. You get it from there, and those outlets have said to you, we are not discriminating against Shapiro's podcast. We're just a platform. Same thing is true of Daily Wire. We put it up on the internet. We have a server. The server doesn't discriminate against us. And now when you search for our website, Google says they have an algorithm that's neutral. It comes up. And that means that you have more information, right? That's why these technologies are great. Social media promised they were going to be neutral. And so everybody started using the social media on the promise they were going to be neutral, that if I was looking for Daily Wire, I would get Daily Wire, that if I was on Facebook and I followed Ben Shapiro, then Ben Shapiro's posts were going to pop up in my timeline, or Dennis Prager's, or Steven Crowder's, or Laura Ingram's, or anybody's, right? You follow that person, the implicit guarantee was Facebook would not stand between you and the information you wanted to see. It was a neutral arbiter. Okay, but now things have changed. So everybody started investing tons of money in Facebook, in Google, in YouTube, in SEO, in research, in marketing, right? We all started investing lots of money in those things on the promise that Facebook, Google, YouTube, Twitter, that all of these outlets were acting more like AT&T, more like they were providing a phone line than acting like the editors of the New York Times. They weren't actually cultivating my content, right? They had no control over my content. They were just the neutral platform on which we put material. Then all the heads of these companies decided that they were going to lie to the public, and from now on, they were going to become gatekeepers again. So they sucked everyone into this lie that they were just AT&T, that they were just a phone line. And then they said, you know what, we're not a phone line anymore. We're the editors of the New York Times. Even the editor of the New York Times, Dean Baquet, he came out and he said, it seems to me that people over at Facebook are acting more like we are than they're acting like a social media platform. Okay, this is a serious problem because it means that now when you follow people like me on Facebook, my alerts may not pop up in your timeline anymore because Mark Zuckerberg has decided he doesn't want you to see my alerts. Now, the way Facebook expresses it is, we just want better news. But there's no standard for better news. They say, well, better news is nonpartisan news. Says whom? Says whom? That's clearly not what the public feels because when left to their own devices, the public likes partisan news, which is fine. They're allowed. It's the United States. Now, Facebook's a private company, but there is a lie that they engaged in, and that lie actually has some legal ramifications. Let me explain why. The way that free speech works in the United States when it comes to lawsuits, for example, the way free speech works is that if you are a social media platform, a neutral social media platform, you cannot be sued for the material that is put on your platform. You're an open source platform, like Facebook, for example, and somebody puts something up that's slanderous or libelous, really slanderous because libel is spoken. In any case, and somebody puts up something that is defamatory on Facebook. Can Facebook be sued for having that stuff up on Facebook? The answer is no. Facebook cannot be sued for that. Instead, only the person who posted it can be sued. That's because Facebook is like AT&T, right? If I say something nasty about Mathis over the phone on a radio show, then the phone company doesn't get sued, right? Verizon doesn't get sued every time I say something nasty about Mathis. Okay, only I get sued if I say something nasty and untrue and defamatory about Mathis. Okay, but what if the phone company decides that it's going to screen my calls? And so every time I say something now, the phone company is going to intervene and mute me every time I say something they don't like. Well, now the phone company is on the hook because the phone company has decided what it's okay for me to say and what it's not okay for me to say. Facebook is doing that. Facebook is deciding they are no longer a social media platform. They are instead a publisher. They're going to intervene as to what you can see and what you can't. YouTube is doing the same thing. Twitter is doing the same thing with its verification protocols. Google is doing the same thing. And this means they are now going to be I think that in the very near future, they're really opening themselves up here. I think that there will be lawsuits in the near future in which all of these social media platforms are sued for the content that they allowed to be put on their sites because they're acting as cultivators of content and publishers of content, not merely a social media platform. I think there's a pretty decent legal case for all of this. And maybe that'll encourage all of these social media companies to go back to being platforms, because fully 78% of Americans between the ages of 18 and 49 get their news from social media, right? They use it more like a phone line. They use it more like a search engine than they use it like the New York Times, right? 55% of 50-plus Americans get their news from social media. So if all of these companies decide to act like publishers and crack down on the right, which is what has happened in the last few months, right? Virtually every right-wing site has seen its traffic plummet except for Fox News, just because it was a legacy brand that's really large. If that continues to happen, I think that what you will see is people begin to realize that this is a publisher. Well, if Facebook is a publisher, Facebook has a real problem, just on the basis of unlicensed photos alone. Like, we at the Daily Wire license our photos, right? We have a contract with Getty Images. That's how we get all of our photos that we put up on our site, and we pay for those. How many unlicensed images are there every minute on Facebook? Probably thousands. Thousands every minute on Facebook. Well, what happens when a photographer says, listen, I know that schmuck in Iowa decided to put up my photo, but he doesn't have a lot of money. I'm going to sue Facebook instead because it's Facebook's job to prevent copyright infringements. And so now I'm going to go after Facebook. Or let's say that someone gets slandered on Twitter or on Facebook. And they say, you know what? Facebook, Twitter, these are now publishers. I'm going to sue them for having allowed this stuff to be published. It could bankrupt these companies pretty quickly. So these companies ought to get wise, okay? They're not in the business of publishing, nor should they be. They should be in the business of being social media platforms. The fact that they are not is actually restricting the kind of news you can see. They are deciding the flow of information. They have reestablished the media gatekeepers. That is very, very bad for the United States. You don't want Mark Zuckerberg deciding what news you can see. You want you deciding what news you can see. And Zuckerberg should figure that out pretty damn quickly, or he's going to have a serious problem on his hands. Okay, well, meanwhile, in other news, the president decided to fire his VA secretary. This was long overdue. He, of course, tweeted it out because he's the president, and that's what the president does. So here's what he tweeted. I said, I'm pleased to announce that I intend to nominate highly respected Admiral Ronnie L. Jackson, M.D., as the new Secretary of Veterans Affairs. And he said, in the interim, Honorable Robert Wilkie of DOD will serve as acting secretary. I'm thankful for Dr. David Shulkin's service to our country and to our great veterans. Well, the truth is he was really ticked at Shulkin. This was a long time in coming. The VA has been mishandled and misrun for years. Of course, there was obviously the Veterans Affairs scandal in the latter years of the Obama administration, in which it became clear that the VA was putting people on hold, that they were making people wait for years at a time, and those people were literally dying in line. When Trump announced on Wednesday he was ousting David Shulkin, who was an Obama holdover, and nominating his physician to replace him. It's a weird pick, Ronnie Jackson. Ronnie Jackson is, by all accounts, a really good doctor. He was bipartisan, pick in the White House to be the presidential doctor, and he has never run a $200 million agency or $200 billion agency. That's a very weird pick by Trump, but Trump tends to pick people that he trusts personally. Shulkin's exit was expected, although the timing was not known, according to Politico, after he antagonized the White House with a scandal over a taxpayer-financed trip to Europe last summer and engaged in open warfare with conservatives in his agency. Trump made the decision on Wednesday afternoon. The news was delivered by Chief of Staff Kelly in a short phone call to Shulkin. The turnover in the administration right now is quite high, but here is the good news. The turnover has been for the better. Okay, all of the upgrades have been upgrades, indeed. Right, John Bolton is an upgrade over H.R. McMaster over at National Security Advisor. Mike Pompeo is a clear upgrade over Rex Tillerson at Secretary of State. So Trump's administration is getting better, not worse. And getting rid of Shulkin will be quite useful. He'd been looking at a few people, including Robert Wilkie, the guy who's the interim guy, as well as Fox News host Pete Hegseth. He liked Hegseth on TV, but Hegseth does have a background with the Veterans Affairs Department. And this was a surprise that Jackson was the guy. He was recently nominated for promotion in rank. It's unclear whether he'll remain an active duty officer if he is confirmed by the Senate. So we will find out whether this improves the agency or not, but it certainly can't make it worse. The VA Inspector General reported last year that Shulkin and his wife had improperly accepted Wimbledon tickets and used staff to arrange sightseeing visits during a business trip to Denmark and England last summer. Shulkin repaid the money in question, but foes in the White House and the VA used the opportunity to press for his removal. There is wide wide belief on the right that Shulkin had done a really terrible job in this particular job and that he had to go. So good for the president, late but necessary. So that is a good thing. In another move that, by the way, just to show you how crazy the media is, really totally crazy. Katie Tur over at MSNBC, she decided that this was actually a distraction tactic, right? She says that getting rid of Shulkin is a distraction tactic. Sure, it had been coming for months. Sure, no one cares all that much. But according to the media, this is the be-all, end-all, and it's distracting from something, right? This is the media's going theory, is whenever Trump just does something and they don't know why, it must be a distraction from his scandals. It's not a distraction from his scandals. He wanted to replace his VA secretary. He got rid of him. It's that simple. But the media are full of crazies, and here's Katie Tur being one of them.
And let's bring back tonight's panel. Jonathan Lemire, Michelle Goldberg, Michael Steele. It does feel like a distraction tactic to
totally.
me. Am I crazy?
No, you're not. No, it is totally that. You know, folks were waking up this morning having a conversation about the news that was breaking that we talked about before. Now, all of a sudden, we're now talking about Shulkin. And what the president's going to do, he's got the list of people that he wants to help him remake his cabinet. And he will roll them in and out as the news cycle warrants.
Okay, so no. I mean, I like Michael Steele, but this is wrong. Okay, this is not correct. This is not about, Trump distracting from anything. Again, people are going crazy over nonsense. They're also going crazy because the president decided that he was going to ask about immigration status in the latest census, which is certainly within his purview. But as Guy Benson writes, this is not even a thing, right? Why is this even a question as to whether we should ask about census status? Prior to 2010, according to Guy, which represents the historical anomaly on this question, citizenship questions had appeared on U.S. censuses dating back to the early 1800s. Okay, the citizenship inquiry on the long-form version of the questionnaire from 1970 to 2000 appeared. And so, but people are saying this is somehow going to alienate illegal immigrants who won't get a proper census count. So we can ask about race, we can ask about religion, but we can't ask about whether you're in the country legally? Again, it just demonstrates how crazy everyone is that this is decided to become that this has become even an issue. This is not an issue, but because it's Trump, everything is an issue now, no matter how stupid. Okay, time for a couple of things I like and then some things that I hate. So let's do it. Things I like. So I've started watching this documentary on Netflix about a cult that was up in Oregon. Nobody's heard of this cult, but apparently it was linked to the largest poisoning case in United States history. It's an amazing story. And the documentary is really well done. It does make you uneasy about the capacity of human beings to follow incredibly crazy ideas because they find meaning in them. And it just demonstrates once again that in the absence of Judeo-Christian values, people will fall for anything. That if you stand for nothing, you'll stand for anything. And if you will listen to anything, then you will fall for anything. In any case, here is a little bit of the preview for Wild Wild Country on Netflix.
Everybody felt they were there at the beginning of the great experiment, like we were the chosen people.
I'm here in one of the largest ranches in the Northwest. Today, it's Rajneeshpuram because a prominent Indian guru and his followers bought it.
Our vision was to create a community
Based on compassion and sharing.
Bhagwan's agenda was simply to raise the consciousness of humanity. That was his goal.
America was land of promise. It was my conviction we will have no problems.
I don't think America has a place for these people.
Everyone in Antelope mistrusts Rajneesh.
I want that guru and his evil influence out of my city.
They're run by satanic power.
There is talk of vigilantes who may seek revenge on the Rajneeshis.
Okay, it's really interesting, but it is worth noting that this group was holding orgies and poisoning people, and things went pretty wild pretty quickly. So it's a very interesting documentary and well worth the watch. Okay, time for a couple of things that I hate. I really should have put this in things I like. Sean Penn has written a novel, and it is just as grand as you would have thought that it was. Sean Penn is a very good actor. I like Sean Penn's acting. I think Sean Penn is a really good actor. I think he's great in Mystic River. I think that he's a very compelling actor to watch on screen. He's also an absolute crazy person. And this comes out in his writing. I don't know what he thought he was writing. Jonah Goldberg thinks he was trying to do Pynchon, which giant fail. But I'm going to read to you a couple of sections of Sean Penn's new book. Okay? It is not good. Somebody over at Huffington Post has wasted their time reading the entire thing and provided us these samples. Pretty amazing. Quote, hence, his life remains incessantly infused with her identity infidelity and her abhorrent ascensions to those constant salacious sessions of sexual solitaire she'd seen as self-regard. That's an actual thing that somebody wrote. So you understand, he's got a thesaurus on his nightstand because he doesn't know any of those words. But it doesn't even make any sense. Like, what is he even talking about? Like, if he's just saying that there's a woman who had an affair and then was pleasuring herself, then he should just say that. That's not even the word. This one is pretty spectacular. Whenever he felt these collisions of incubus and succubus, he punched his way out of the proletariat with a purposeful inputting of covert codes, thereby drawing distraction through Scottsdale's deployments, dodging the ambush of innocence astray, evading the Viscount Vogue of Viagratic assaults on virtual vaginas, or worse, falling passively into prosaic pastimes. What in the efferoo? What in the world? This one, I think, is my favorite. While the privileged patronize this pickle as epithet to the epigenetic inequality of equals, Bob smells a cyber-assisted assault emboldened by right-brained Hollywood narcissists. What? So, Sean, you're good at one thing. Okay, the thing that you are good at is acting. You should probably stick to that because it is not good. Now, listen, I have a lot of sympathy for people trying to write novels. I wrote a novel. I think it's decent, but there are some people who hate it. That's fine. I don't think there's a person on earth who thinks this is good. It's amazing to me that he even found a publisher, if he did. I don't even know if he self-published it. But in any case, this is just bad writing, and it just demonstrates that because you're famous doesn't mean you're good at everything. There's this weird notion among rich and famous people that they are good at lots of things. One of the great things in life is to recognize your own limitations. Man's got to recognize his limitations, as Clint Eastwood says in Unforgiven. And Sean should recognize his limitations, I think. Okay, the other thing that I hate today comes from world's most unfunny person, Samantha Bee, legitimately an unfunny human being. She was on ABC's The View. Why can't I get on The View? What the hell, guys? I mean, I've been lobbying for this for years. What do I have to do? Other than Samantha Bee, but you won't have me on? Come on. What does a man got to do to get on The View? Okay, in any case, Samantha Bee was asked about President Trump, and of course, here's what she had to say.
From my perspective, it's worse than I imagined. Right. I mean, I can't, I have my own predictions, but I didn't expect it to be this fast. I didn't expect everything to happen at this pace. I didn't expect it to be as incoherent as I feel it to be. I didn't expect it to be as mean-spirited as I personally find it to be. Yeah, so it's been a grave disappointment, but
it gives you a lot of material.
Well, I'd rather balance. I prefer a slower paced show.
Okay, so let's be real about this. There was no way she was going to say that things are going better than I expected, but things are going better than anyone expected. Okay, when it comes to President Trump's administration, okay, the economy is good, everybody's doing pretty well. There hasn't been this giant assault on civil liberties or anything remotely like that. But the left has spun itself up into such a frenzy that everything is worse than you could possibly have imagined. Pretty much all the chaos I imagined, right? I thought, if you were realistic about President Trump, you figured that this is pretty much how that part of the administration was going to go, right? Trump was going to tweet stupid crap all the time. And indeed, that has happened. But even Samantha Bee should be looking at the stock market or at the economic statistics and going, well, to be honest with you, I thought that there was going to be a Great Depression 3 days in. I thought we would already be in a nuclear war by now. At a certain point, don't you get tired of being, this panicked about stuff that's not going all that badly? Apparently not. Apparently there's still a big market for this. So, whatever. All right, so we will be back here tomorrow, and we'll be back here with the mailbag. So many things to discuss then. That's why you should subscribe. Again, $9.99 a month. It helps us out. It helps us bring you the show. Get the annual subscription, get the Tumblr, the whole deal, and ask us all the questions that your heart desires, and we'll answer them tomorrow for you. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. The Ben Shapiro Show is produced by Mathis Glover, executive producer Jeremy Boring, senior producer Jonathan Hay. Our technical producer is Austin Stevens, edited by Alex Zingaro. Audio is mixed by Mike Coromina. Hair and makeup is by Jesua Alvera. The Ben Shapiro Show is a Daily Wire Forward Publishing production. Copyright Forward Publishing 2018. What makes technology great is that it is value neutral and provides data. And then it's up to human beings how they want to use that data. And if we are provided with more data, then this gives us a better ability to choose. But value neutral is important when it comes to the platforms. Now, value neutral isn't important when it comes to, you come to the Daily Wire. We're not value